Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and being a producer of Wrestle Massacre as well as Inside Movies Galore, I am David Streggy, and welcome to Delusions of Grandeur. Enjoy the reviews. I certainly did.
Okay, Dave, that's it. Screw you and your college flunkies. I've had enough of this from you and from everyone else. I know what you guys are trying to do. Break me down, drive me out of the force. Well, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than a lame prank like this to get Curtis Mooney to throw in his badge, so fuck you. Over.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of What's in My Room. Done here on Delusions of Grandeur. I'm your host, David Streggy, and here I have some films that I have not yet cataloged in my movie app, and Toxic Films is is a distribution company run by Jason Toth, and he's done a number of distributed titles. I haven't been as much of a collector of them as I probably should. But here is one called TI Syndrome. TT Syndrome. TT Syndrome. Here's what the cover looks like. And sometimes Jason Toth puts these out without the directors, with or without the director's approvals, I think, or maybe he does. But this is directed by Dejan Zakevic, and it's got English subtitles. It's from 2002. I believe it's a Turkish film. Several people get locked in a Turkish bath at night, being hunted by a brutal serial killer who seems to be seized with the TT syndrome, a brain malady that leads to painful sociopathy. So the film is unrated, and I'm looking forward to watching this extreme film. Ultimately, eventually. Um, One of the first, in fact, the first thing that I put money into, it was $50 or $30, and 30 to $50 thereabouts, and it was into a film that was directed by Doug Ruse, and he lives in Hong Kong or Singapore, and he directed a movie called The Sky Has Fallen, and just for getting 2 copies of his films, he put my name in the back of his films, and I thought that was really cool at the time. And he gave me 2 copies. This was the Ultimate Edition. The only thing that I didn't like about the director is that he pooled for all of his funds on Kickstarter. It's like he didn't even use any money of his own. He actually used other people's money, and I wish that he would have at least used his own money somewhat. I mean, you can't just use other people's money to put money into making your films. You've got to learn how to do things on your own steam, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, afterwards, this is something that I noticed. He kept kickstarting the darn thing and just kept adding people's names to future printings, and that's what he did. That's what he does. That's what he did for the longest time. In fact. So here is another Toxic Filth release. Evidently, this says number 26 on the back. And it says Splatter Heroin Volume 1. And it looks like it's just some Japanese splatter horror. So I'm not sure what exactly it is, but it's a lot of Japanese torture. Looks like it's Japanese snuff. So fairly interesting. This one says it's number 25, and this one is also Japanese. This one says thorough attacks on a heroine's vital parts. So I'm assuming that this is another Japanese snuff of torture. From Jason Toth's Toxic Filth stuff. So cultaction.com actually puts out these all region DVDs of films from other countries. And this one is from Taiwan from 1981. And it's called Succubare. It definitely looks cool. And I have a ton of these because I bought a ton of them from someone who had actually bought and had a bunch of them, and I bought them all up. You'll never quite tremble with uncontrolled terror as the ancient tribal practices of succubar are revealed before your very eyes in a remote area of northern China. Uh, Lies a tribal state which adheres to the mystic rites and ancient superstitions of their forefathers. This state is ruthlessly ruled by four deliciously wicked princesses who have the power to cast evil spells on those lovers who decide to leave them. Should a lover not return to them within an allotted time, he is doomed to die in sometimes the most gruesome ways. Succorable mixes ancient rituals, passion, and lust locations with shockingly gory footage and superb martial arts action. Succubar, starring Carter Wong, directed by Y. Yip or Y Yip. So there we go. It doesn't have a barcode on it, so I've got to actually type it into my collection. So this says it's number 7 of Toxic Filth. Evidently, he numbers many of his releases. This is uncut and uncensored. This says Dawn of the Dead Zombie Toxin. So that's the cover. And it reads on the back here, set in England, a man and his servant unwittingly release a zombie producing toxin into the countryside. A roller coaster of mishaps and adventures ensue, ultimately resulting in a fantastic showdown between good and evil. A lost classic from the late 90s, features sick, gross out humor and enough horror and gore to please the most jaded viewer. So grab a six pack and some snacks and prepare for a gross out gore fest from across the pond. Yeah. So, yep. So that's another toxic filth um, distributed film. I guess this is another Japanese release of gore. Says this is number 24. This says Bloody Domination Death Match. So I'm assuming that that's some extreme gore of sorts, which should be interesting. So this says Toxic Filth Ward, and this is it says it's number 11. This says it's called Swedish Horror. And so we have a ton of short films on here. This is a compilation of the best short Swedish horror films of the last decade. Smorgasbord of monsters, blood, insanity, humor, thrills, disgust, and death. So in here we've got the Resurrection of Michael Myers, Part 2. A sick, funny, and sick, violent parody with sick, good-looking gore effects. Zombie Psycho, STHLM. Dog Walk, Phantom Massacre, Return of the Monster, Facts Are Safety, Control Alt Delete, Shug Fake, or Scug Fake, 2/5, 23209, Cowboys on Monster Island, and Anacolat. So, I guess these are short films from Sweden that are of an extreme nature. I'll definitely be interested in watching those eventually. This one looks like it's another Japanese one, and it's got some cool artwork on it. It's called Musan E, and this says it's number 31. It says presented uncut with English subtitles. So this one actually has English subtitles. This is a gore fest of some sort. Musan E. Should be interesting. So this is another Toxic Filth. This says it's release number 4. And I guess it's called The Green Elephant. And Zeleny Slonik is also known as The Green Elephant. It's directed by Svetlana Baskova. And it says it's uncut with subtitles. So two men are held in a penal military prison. The room which they share looks like a dark cellar with a dripping sewer pipe running through it. One of the prisoners seems to be delirious and never stops talking. In order to cheer up his inmate, he tells lewd stories of his past, does some push ups, comes up with crazy ideas, and even mimics a heron, only to make his companion go absolutely mad at him. The clumsy talker receives a violent beating from the enraged prisoner. The angry officer is then taken from the cell by a guard to clean up a dirty toilet bowl with a fork. Sometime later, the insane officer defecates in the only plate bowl both share for eating, smears feces over his belly, and devours a large portion of it. After doing so, he offers a plate with the fecal matter to the other man right after he wakes up and drives him mad again. The two main characters go through a series of humiliating acts conducted by a guard and a captain who seem to have a strong sadistic streak. One of the prisoners remains oblivious to the situation throughout the story, while the other one is becoming more aggressive and less sane with every moment. The story resolves with an act of graphic violence, including rape, sodomy, disembowelment, committing suicide, and dying of a blood loss. So, I'm not sure where this film is from, but it looks like it's sick and very extreme. The Green Elephant. So here I have a film that stars Beryl Reed, Flora Robeson, and Tessa Wyatt. Um, a film called The Beast in the Cellar, and it's directed by James Kelly. Um, Apparently, this was distributed by Smooth Pictures, which evidently you can always find these in the dollar bin. Uh, but anyways, I'll read the back here. A small town forest becomes the hunting grounds for a crazed killer when Stephen Ballantyne, kept locked in the cellar for 30 years, escapes and begins exacting revenge. During army training on a remote English moor, a soldier is brutally murdered by an unknown assailant. Uh, the attack is so ferocious that the investigating officer assumes a vicious beast mauled the soldier. But this is just the first in a series of bloodthirsty killings. And suddenly, fingers begin pointing to the missing man and the hell he has endured in the cellar. So, the film works with production companies Tegan British Film Productions, as well as Leander Films Limited, along with producers Dennis Friedland and Christopher C. Dewey. The film stars John Hamill, T.P. McKenna as well, and yeah, there is The Beast in the Cellar. I have not watched that yet, so I hope to and plan to eventually watch that. Now, I actually put money into this campaign, and it's a film by Adrian Baez, and this is called The Bizarre Art of Samantha. Um, this is the limited edition a copy. It is signed, um, and it says on the back here, Extreme Horror Cinema and Suspiric Noir present. But Adrian Baz is the director behind the production company Molly Welsh Video Productions. So, in any case, the film says on the back here, two sisters deal with the separation of each other, drug addiction, and extraterrestrial. So, the film stars Kathleen Lean Marissa, Lauren Faulkner, Warren Chan, and Jeremy Pera. So, definitely some cool artwork. I have not watched this yet, but I have watched many of his other films. So, um, looking forward to that. Um, so, this is the UK edition of Brad Pitt and Casey Affleck's The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I thought that this was unique and interesting, but it's a limited edition version of the film. Looks like it's got a book on the inside here. Like I said, this doesn't have a particular barcode or anything like that, so I've got to put that in by hand. Um, so Jessica Cameron um, was asking around online, and I added her, and I ended up getting a copy of the film that she did of Truth or Dare, and this is her version of the film. This was, I believe, part of her Kickstarter campaign, but she was in the original Tim Ritter Truth or Dare film, and then she redid her own, and I think she inspired some kind of hatred or whatnot. Um, so, yeah, we've got Jessica Cameron. This evidently was her company, Small Town Girl Productions. So Jessica Cameron, Ryan Kaiser, Heather Dwarf, Shelby Stellan, Delvany Pinn, and Brandon Van Villet um, all starred. Evidently, this film was the winner of 34 awards. So I'll have to check this out eventually just to see what her version of Truth or Dare it was. But in any case, a lot of people don't remember or realize. She said that this was the Irish, the Ireland version. So, the Ireland crowdfunding campaign. Now, this is a anthology called Terror Telly, and it is the producer's cut of some tales from Nick Box, Peter Murfitt, Chan Walrus, Torrin Langan, and James Balsamo. So Acid Bath Productions and Dead Good Like Films from the UK. Those guys were part of each other. And if you know anything about Torrin Langan, he actually did the Three Dead Tales the three dead trick or treaters, I believe. So this kind of got him sort of out there. Um, Terratelli. So, but I actually got this from Nick Box himself. So I was very, very impressed with it. So this next film is called The Stall, and it's directed by Mike Lombardo. And this was a short film called The Stall. It is signed, if you can see that it was signed. And it says here on the back, in the newest short film from horror comedy troupe Real Splatter Productions, a pizza shop employee faces blasphemous terrors from outside time and space when he finds himself trapped in the restroom during the Lovecraftian apocalypse. So, um, I'm very curious about where will you be when the end comes. Don't trash, just blush. So, yeah, glad I was able to get this film. I believe I bought this film from Brad Twigg. Um, glad that it's signed and everything like that. Here is another film from Cult Action um, .com. It's called The Return of the Exorcist, and it's from Italy from 1975, and looks like it was directed by Franco Locascio and Angelo Pinacchio. And the film stars Richard Conte, Francois Provost, Patricia Gori, Jean Claude Verne, Sonia Viviani, Elena Svevo, and Mima Monticelli. A young student falls under the influence of an ancient pagan sex cult and becomes possessed, which leads to the usual bad behavior: Leviathan, levitation, snarling, spitting, blasphemy, bile spewing, and so forth, featuring tons of nudity, uh, degenerate sexual behavior, horny satanic rituals, and Richard Conte as the exorcist who must do battle with the demon. One of the most ridiculous and sex filled clones of the exorcist of all time. So I know that this thin pack DVD is actually part of a box set, but this is the way that I found it um, at Half Price Books, and it's called The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. It's based on the novel Munchausen, and it's directed by Terry Gilliam. Join the Baron for a mind blowing odyssey of outrageous fun and adventure. A loony lunar king, a jealous god of fire, a ship swallowing sea beast, and the breathtakingly beautiful goddess Venus, played by Uma Thurman, Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2, are just a few of the fantastic characters encountered in the legendary Baron von Munchausen, played by John Neville, A Study in Terror, as he attempts to free a besieged city from the invading hordes of the Ottoman Empire. Assisting him on his perilous journey is a highly unusual servant, played by Eric Idle, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and a feisty little girl named Sally, played by Sarah Polly from Dawn of the Dead. Nominated for 4 Academy Awards from 1989: Best Visual Effects, Best Art Direction, Best Makeup, and Best Costume Design. Terry Gilliam's acclaimed, adored epic fantasy is a spectacle that is indeed spectacular, um, said by Vincent Canby of the New York Times. Columbia Pictures and Sony Pictures prominent features with Laura Films uh, helped distribute this film. So I love that Robin Williams shows up as the Lunar King in here. And this is actually one of my favorite films of Terry Gilliam's. So that being said, I'll stick that over here. So this was a document. This was based on actual events. It's called Underground Entertainment. It stars Jim O'Rear and Brian Wilson. It was a found footage mockumentary, I believe. So this says it's Underground Movement, the movie. So in 1990, a television series was born that was unlike anything that the world had yet seen. Created by Jim O'Rear and Brian Wilson, Underground Entertainment captured the planet in its grip weekly, introducing humankind to new pleasures, experiences, and freedoms. Now, 20 years after its television debut, Underground Entertainment returns with an all-star cast as a hilarious, irreverent feature-length documentary that chronicles television entertainment. This is the incredible true story of the little television show that influenced everything and changed the world, featuring the talents of Robert Englund from Nightmare on Elm Street, Danielle Harris from Halloween, Williams Forsythe from Raising Arizona, Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters, Tom Savini from Dusk Till Dawn, Lloyd Kaufman of The Toxic Avenger, Tony Todd from Candyman, Serena Vincent from Cabin Fever, Danielle Emery Taylor from Return of the Swamp Thing, Ron Jeremy from Orgasmo, Mel Tillis from Cannonball Run, Billy Drago from The Untouchables, and many more. So, yeah, SIB Studios presents an underground entertainment empire production, but this was put out by Legless Corpse Films. Um, this was one of the last films that I had actually picked up from um, Legless Corpse Films before Chad Armstrong's untimely death. So, yeah, so glad that I picked that up. I have not watched that yet, but I do plan to. So, this is from the makers of The Burglars from Hell. This is Phil Herman's SOV cult classic, Tales Till the End. Um, it was put out on the Sleaze Box, which is Chris Wood's company, distribution company. So when Armageddon is upon us, the only way to keep safe is to find shelter. When three friends hide out underground and wait until the end, they decide to tell each other tales from their past. Tales that include murder, sex, maniacs, nymphos, sexy women, and crazed men. The Sleazebox teams up with Phil Herman, burglar from hell, again to bring his 1996 shot-on-video cult classic Tales Till the End to DVD for the first time. Three tales directed by three insane tales directed and starring Herman, Barry Gaines, and Ben Stansky. The film also features some genre favorites such as Joel D. Winco from Rot, Creep, Make Them Die Sleazy, and Scream Queen Debbie D. Burglar from Hell killed the Screen Queen, and Sickened. So glad I was able to pick this up eventually. And then, of course, my collector's edition version of Taxi Driver, starring Robert De Niro. This is the 2 disc set. Um, but yeah, um, Martin Scorsese directed Taxi Driver, and I've seen this several times now. It's definitely one of Martin Scorsese's best films, especially from New York, and it had um, quite an ending. So, uh, uh, um, Robert De Niro, of course, is very young in here, and he works alongside Jodie Foster and Albert Brooks, Harvey Keitel, Leonard Harris, and Peter Boyle. So, and Sybil Shepherd. So, very some very young names in here, and just some marvelous cinematography. So, in any case, there I go for today. Thank you so much for listening. Um, I enjoyed describing some of my stories where I gotten some of these films with you, and hopefully you enjoyed my description of these films. Well, if I've watched them, I do a small little review of them or tell a little small story where I picked them up from. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Appreciate your time spent on my page, and definitely look out for some more cool stuff that I'll be sharing with you. So, thank you so much.
You were good, kid, real good. But as long as I'm around, you'll always be second best, see?